welcome to Impacted with Bison and...
Coming from the empty space, speaking from the void, it's the JOE-KER.
Hi Joe, it's great to be speaking with you today. Now, basically this is our pilot episode of a show called Impacted, and what we decided to do was set this show up to talk about characters of Impact Wrestling. We're both big fans of pro wrestling, we're both fans of Impact Wrestling, and we thought it would be a really cool idea to do a little bit more of an in-depth view on what we feel of the past of wrestlers, characters of the show, talk about what they're doing currently, obviously in the present, and maybe put a few ideas forward or a few thoughts forward on where we think that they're going to go in the future. I think that Joe is a massive fan, a huge person that we're going to discuss today. So I'm going to let him tell you who we're dealing with. Away you go, Joe.
We are dealing with a mysterious creature. We are dealing with the Hive Queen herself. We are going to be talking about Rosemary.
Yes, and let's say it properly. Rosemary!
More daunting than I am.
So Rosemary is a pretty impressive character, very character-driven, in fact, rather than necessarily, I mean, don't get me wrong, she's fantastic in the ring, but her character is very character-driven, would you say? Yes,
definitely.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just based on the fact that she's a bit of a badass in the ring or, she's a bit of a meanie. It is definitely a different style, a different kind of character. Dare I say it, a little bit in the realms of old school Undertaker, do you think?
Yeah, it certainly shows how Impact's allowing the superstars creative freedom. It really boosts the overall originality of it all, really. Again, like I've just said, it's giving the superstars their freedom, and it's showing that they're not afraid to let them take that freedom and go with it.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the main things about it is that they've not been afraid to say, you know what, let's create like an alternative universe. Let's create a new realm. Let's create something that in reality doesn't exist. We all know that the shadow doesn't exist. However, in her storylines are concerned, it very much exists, and I think that is something that comes across really, really well. And I think Rosemary as a character really portrays and totally engrosses herself into her character, and that shows in all aspects of Rosemary, whether it be on social media, whether it be just in video packages, vignettes, whatever they do on the show and off the show. She seems to very rarely be out of character, and I think they being she's definitely kayfabe. So I think that from a character-driven point of view, she is totally engrossed in that and very rarely breaks it. Would you agree?
She's the queen of kayfabe.
Yeah, she's definitely.
You see any promotion she goes to, you only got to look at her Instagram posts. If you're not following her Instagram, you're pretty mad, to be honest. Look at she's carrying a lot of stuff that she's doing now over wherever she goes.
Oh, she definitely does that. I think she's a great self-promoter, and she understands the power of self-promotion, whether in whatever aspect that she's doing that in. I think she really understands that, and that comes across really, really well in whether she's doing an indie promotion, whether she's doing something specific on social media. She completely understands her character, and I think that is the key to creating the type of following that she has. Because let's face it, even if she's playing a heel, she's a face, right?
Yes, it's undeniable about that.
Because the crowd just love her. I mean, recently I was at the Impact New York tapings, as I think a lot of listeners already know. But believe you me, as soon as that music hit, as soon as the lights died and all the purple and everything else, started to appear, the crowd went insanely mad for her. And yeah, just one of the most, for me, one of the most impressive entrances and iconic entrances that Impact have done in many, many years.
Yeah. You've taken the words out of my mouth, really. I've not been to a live event, sadly. But yeah, the music kicks in, your spine chills, and you're just waiting for it to come down to the ring, and you're just buzzing from start to finish.
About that. So, obviously drawn back a little bit, I think we've drawn a really good picture there of what we think of Rosemary, that's for sure, as a character. Let's take it back a little bit. So she debuted, I think it was back in January 2016. And, she was the kind of like the leader of a faction that we would both love to see return, I think, but the faction Decay. And that included at the time the legendary Abyss, and a character which had been a little bit goofy up until this moment, a little bit sort of kind of like, a bit of a jokey character, really. Sort of the Crazy Steve character. And I think when they created the Decay faction, I think you saw a really, really different, more sinister clown character come from Crazy Steve with his sort of kind of muted appeal. He didn't really say anything, did he? He just sort of kind of noises, and that was about it, really. And then Rosemary was almost like this kind of like gel that gelled this team together. Do you think?
Oh, that definitely. Well, when she came out and introduced everyone, Crazy Steve was one of the guys I did not expect to be coming out with her. I had a feeling Abyss would come up because you see the horror aspect, you think, well, there's got to be the monster Abyss. But when Crazy Steve came out first, that blew me away. I was a pretty big fan of Crazy Steve, actually, but the short time I'd seen him beforehand. When he came out, I thought this is the route he needs to go down to reinvent this character, and they did it perfectly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to lie with Crazy Steve. I mean, when he was part of the faction Menagerie, I don't know if you remember those, but the Menagerie, he was a bit of a goofy character. No one could deny the guy's got some serious in-ring skills, without doubt. But I don't think the character that he was trying to portray at that time was really him. And I think once he was able to sink his teeth into becoming the proper Crazy Steve, the more sinister kind of Crazy Steve, I think he really came to the forth. And I think the Decay faction, as it was, was just awesome. And it didn't take very long for the Impact fans, the Impact crowd, to really start to take to this faction and the characters within it.
It blew up from day one. Even the commentators, Josh Matthews and the Pope, they set it up really well. Just not having a clue what was going on. You could see it on Davey Richards and Eddie Edwards' face. That nobody expected this, and nobody expected them to get as big as they did.
No, I think, and props to Billy Corgan. I'm not, to be honest with you, I like some of the things that Billy did, but there was a lot of things that I wasn't so keen on that he did. I'm not so keen on the way that he's acting currently, but that's another story. But I think the idea of the Decay faction, I think, was probably the best thing that he came up with regards to Impact, or TNA as it was at the time. I think that the fact that he got was it Marilyn Manson involved with regard to the music. I've forgotten the name of the song now. What was the name of the song? Do you remember?
The Nobodies.
The Nobodies. That's right. It's the Nobodies. The fact that he got them in, he got obviously Marilyn to let them use the Nobodies as their theme track, I think made a massive massive impacts, as it were, on the faction as well, because I think everyone was like, wow, this is really cool. They've got like Marilyn Manson's their theme tune, Crazy Steve is like crazy. They've now got Abyss in there, who is like, an ultimate Hall of Famer now. And to be honest with you, I think for me, the crazy of the Asylum Abyss or whatever was a great character, and over the years he's been an awesome inspiration for a lot of the wrestlers on the Impact roster. But I believe that when it comes to character, although I think the Joseph Parks one from a comedy point of view was fun, and he played it really well, for me, I think this was his best character. I don't know what you think, but for me, I think this was the one that, for me was like really good.
Yeah, I missed most of the Asylum years. I started watching 2015, the end of 2015,
Sure.
fully breaking away from the dreaded WWE. Had enough of the repetition and I don't want to really go down that route really, because it'll stir up a lot of different opinions.
We don't want to open up the can of worms, right?
No, we don't. But I moved on from there. Was lucky enough to have someone say, you got to watch this a bit more. I was watching TNA on and off when I could, because it was a bit on a pretty awkward channel to get to, and the timing was always a bit off. Excuse me. And so when I finally got around to watching it full time, I was already engaged in that with DJZ, with Tigre Uno and Eddie Edwards. So, and James Storm and Abyss, they were doing something with Mickey James at the time as well. So I was pretty familiar with Abyss being this creepy character. And then you hear it from the commentators, Abyss's past, about his hardcore history with Jeff Hardy as well. So I was well aware that Abyss is going to be this dominating character, regardless of wherever he goes. And then
without doubt,
Rosemary brought that back out of him.
Yeah, I mean, the guy is massive. Let's just face the facts. The guy's huge. He is a serious powerhouse, and he can move. And I think, these days it's not quite as rare to have a big guy that can move at speed. I mean, look at Congo Kong, look at Falaba, for instance. I mean, I know he's dropped a little bit of weight and he's improved on his, his cardio and he's gone through the roof. Again, another incredibly impressive wrestler to watch live. He absolutely blew me away when I saw him live. Falaba, I'm not going to lie on that one. He's an incredible wrestler. However, getting back to Abyss, the guy is, an incredible talent, and I think, the fact that he was included into the Decay faction with a newcomer. Obviously Rosemary is the leader, and Crazy Steve had already been around, but it's a complete, sort of kind of like change of character. I think that gave the faction credibility straight away. You were like, okay, this is serious. This is going to be good, because at the end of the day, they wouldn't have put Abyss in this if they didn't think, it was going to be something special. Do you think? Yes,
definitely. You need star power to make the everything stand out, and they really couldn't have done it without Abyss on the sidelines.
No, you're right. I think you're right, and I think the fact at the end of the day, Decay obviously grew from there and ended up becoming probably one of the most loved factions of the TNA era.
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay. We got anything? I mean, obviously, as Decay sort of kind of, grew, everything got bigger. The Rosemary character really started to develop, and I think, really started to develop to eventually, we're getting to the point where the Decay faction starts to have, really big, serious, storylines. They ended up, obviously, getting involved in the Broken Universe, with obviously Matt Hardy and Brother Nero. So obviously we needed to, you know, that showed that there was obviously some serious confidence now coming through in the Decay faction, and the fact that they could really push those stories through, because I don't think they would have got them involved in that if they didn't think it was the right thing to do with the Broken Universe. You know, what are your thoughts on the Broken Universe, for instance?
I love the Broken Universe. I love how it was all brought along from Matt Hardy basically cracking under his own ego, and I don't think anyone's going to forget the Swanton from Hell by Jeff Hardy. Nearly missed Matt completely, but it pulled it off anyway. And how they brought that along, and while that was going on, Decay were destroying the rest of the tag team division. They played for everybody.
Yeah.
Got the tag titles from Beer Money, so they are on the next step to move forward. And then after the Matt Hardy had finally broken Jeff, then you knew this was going to come. It was just time to push it to the next level, and they did it perfectly.
So I think you know, when we got to the whole delete Decay thing, or Decay delete, whichever way around it was, I can't remember. You know, that was just one hell of a ride, and you know, I think it was just, I don't know. I mean, Final Deletion was great, but for me, the better one was definitely delete or Decay or delete, whichever way around it was. I can't remember. But I think that was a really, really cool time. You know, towards the end of the TNA era, I think it was a really, really cool time to be watching the show, watching different innovation. And you know, there was no doubt it was different. That's for sure. I mean, you know, we'd seen similar stuff like that. I think, like in terms of the way it was filmed with regards to like Lucha Underground and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, you know, it was very innovative. The way that they sort of kind of linked stuff into, you know, the show, and then sort of kind of like all of a sudden they're into this. They're you know, into this brawl outside kind of thing. I mean, you knew that all of this had been filmed previously, and they were just linking all this stuff together. But the way it was done, I think, was extremely clever. And I think if you didn't enjoy this, then you're not a true pro wrestling fan, because this was, you know, it was great stuff. And I think that, you know, Decay being a part of that, Rosemary being a part of that, was a great move for the faction.
Definitely. I'll go back to what you just said there with the setup of how it was all done. You know, it was all pre-recorded and pre-set up and that, but a lot of people were critical of that just because it wasn't from another company. And then you look at, and after Decay and the Hardys did it, then they tried to do it. Another company tried to do it with Randy Orton and Bray Wyatt, and that didn't work. No, it was. I watched it. It was awful. But the Hardys and Decay, they built their rivalry really, really progressively progressively in a fast pace. But because of all.
But the whole thing was so character driven, wasn't it?
That's what I was trying to get to. Yeah, it was my mind's gone blank, but that's what happens in the void.
I can imagine. Okay, so, you know, at the end of the day, I think this whole sort of kind of build, everything that went through during this period, I think that really kind of cemented Rosemary is almost like a superhero type character. You know, she was from the, you keep saying the void, it keeps from, she was from the shadow, and of course, you know, we knew that there was somebody in the shadow, you know, who we eventually ended up meeting, and I believe it was Kevin Sullivan, if I remember rightly, ended up being that character when we met him during the portion where I think it was Sue Young and Ali and all of that kind of stuff was involved in it. And I think, you know, I think it sort of kind of, it all started to then take shape as Rosemary as such, not so much Decay. I mean, eventually, obviously, we lost the the Decay faction. She ended up breaking out on her own as as a character, and I think she and ultimately. And I think it was inevitable that this was going to happen, because I don't think they really turned her face. I think she just naturally became a face character. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. Well, when a character is as over as Rosemary was, you can't sell her as a heel anymore. Even the fans are just too invested in it. The same thing could be said for well, you look at Rich Swann now. If Rich Swann was to turn heel, I don't think that they'd have to really pull something off to make it believable, because Rich Swann's one of the most over faces in the company. Sammy Callahan is one of the most over heels in the company. You can't turn Sammy Callahan face. No,
exactly. I just don't think that's going to work. I think, and again, with regards to going back to Rosemary character, I think she's just, she's kind of a face, but with a sort of sinister feel to it. Yeah. And I think it works for her. I quite like some of the little comedy moments that you get from her as well. I think they're quite cool. I think she's a really good character actor, shall we say. I think she's very good on that side of things. Okay, so moving on a little bit with Rosemary's career. So we had the Decay thing, and then obviously she started to really come to the fore in the ring as well, where we sort of kind of eventually saw her defeating Jade in that 6 Sides of Steel match. Do you remember that?
Oh, I do. I remember the crossbody off the cage, like a shout out to Gail Kim. I don't know if it was in that match. I think it was. And then how Rosemary just won the belt. You weren't really expecting her to win. She had Gail came outside, so you thought, oh, we're going to see Jade win this. It's blatantly obvious. And then Rosemary pulled off one of the biggest shocks of the year, and it was time for her to become champion. And they carried on the rivalry between Rosemary and Jade for a while, and that was one of the best things that I'd seen as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the fact that she then won that really cemented her character, really cemented her as an incredible knockout, and I think it was also probably a way of saying, you know what, you are so over with the fans, you really deserve this. All the hard work that you've put in, you deserve this moment. And I think when she won it, the crowd just went insane, didn't they?
Oh yeah, everyone lost it.
Yeah. Now. Obviously, she then went on. We had a little bit with Jade going on. We had a defense. I think her first defense was with Sienna. And at the end of the match, Jade turns up and leads to a feud where she defeats Jade 2 more times. I think there was a Monsters Ball, and then there was a last knockout standing match. I think it was. And again, I think the results were inevitable.
Yeah.
And, I love the matches. What about yourself?
I love the matches. I watched the Monsters Ball match last week in the preparation for this, and it's still one of the best I've seen. It's one of the best efforts from both of them, and then. Although sadly Jade eventually left, but if she'd stayed, I think they could have invested in that a lot more, or she could be on a bit in a. Oh man, I'm going to stop there. My mind's gone. We'll get back to Rosemary. No, it's gone there too. There we go.
Right, so it's not. So. Yeah, no, I mean, obviously, Jade was a pretty impressive specimen. She was a fantastic wrestler. She's moved on, but I really enjoyed her time in the company. And I think Rosemary and Jade, they brought the best out in each other, and I think it was a pretty impressive 3-match kind of run between the two of them. It was great. I mean, she then went on to defeat ODB, and I think there was a match with Santana Garrett at some point as well. I mean, she had slight, little feuds with those, which was great. I think, again, great wrestlers having some great matches, and the cat again, Rosemary being so character driven, that it just completely completely sells the entire match in the way that she acts, the way that she screams at the crowd. She is character from the minute you see her to the minute she leaves, and I think it's just a pretty awesome. It's an awesome spectacle to watch. I think from a fan's point of view. Now, moving on, later, I think in 2017, she went on to start protecting Ali, I think it was, from Sienna, and Laurel Von Ness. Now, she that's when she then sort of kind of started talking about the Hive. She started really sort of like kind of cementing this whole the hivelings thing, and I think that again took off massively, and it takes off because she sells it so well. At the end of the day, she's not just telling you about the Hive. She's completely and utterly engrossed in this thing that as far as she's concerned exists, and I think and let's face the facts, it does. The Hive exists, and that's it. End of story.
The Hive is the fans.
That's right. The Hivelings is the fans, and the Hive is the fans. And she's there, obviously, to defend Ali, which eventually ended up with her defeating Sienna. Be defeated by Sienna, which then ended her reign. I think it was 266 days as champion. Now, in anyone's book, 266 days is quite impressive. Do you think?
Oh, it definitely is. It's one of the longest title runs that they've had.
Yeah, I think it comes in number 3 now because Taya obviously is now the number. I think for a long time it was the second longest reign of any knockout champion, and I think now it's the third highest. But it's an impressive period, and I think the bottom line is that during that entire period, I think we were all totally, sold on the character. We were sold on her ability in the ring, and we had some incredible matches, which then obviously led to the next phase with Sienna as Knockouts champion. What about your thoughts on the feud?
On the feud with Sienna? Apart from really using it to bolster up Ali, I wasn't that invested in it, to be honest. I enjoyed the matches, but it was more set up to build up Ali and Rosemary, and how they interact with each other, more than Rosemary versus Sienna and Laura Van Ness.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that was where we sort of started to see the building of the whole Demon Bunny type scenario, and I think that started to come through. I mean, they didn't really fully invest in Demon Bunny on Impact or TNA at the time. They didn't fully invest in that side of the relationship of Ali and Rosemary. But I think when it come to the indies, when it come to social media, I think the pair of them proper invested in that, and I think they were doing like a day out with Rosemary and I think I saw a couple of those shows. They were great, actually. They were really funny. I mean, Rosemary was kind of like, my God, what is this all about? She's like, she's a weirdo, but it was the whole naivety of Ali sort of kind of seeing the good. The good side and of Rosemary, and I think that's all part of sort of like where the face, also really cementing her as a face character, because although she was sort of kind of like the demon, she was also kind of like, it was almost like she's like an anti-superhero. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, she's the lovable demon.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think that works really, really well. Now, obviously, she then it all sort of kind of like moved on. We're moving on to eventually we eventually had the debut of the mighty Taya Valkyrie at the time, who, I mean, the feud was short lived. It didn't last for very long. I think it ended up in defeat. She very shortly was written off TV at that point. Due to having a pretty nasty injury. Now, I've got it written down here as anterior cruciate ligament injury. How about that? That's what she ended up sustaining. She ended up being written off with in that, I think it was the buried alive thing with Su Yung, if I remember rightly.
Yeah, it was a casket match.
That's it, the casket match. There you go. You took the words right out of my mouth, Joe. It's a good job you're here. I might be struggling. So, yeah. So that was in fact, that whole period there with Su Yung was fun. Actually, it was a really good, a really good feud going on there. We're going into all the the different universes and all the rest of it, and we get that kind of that similar kind of like Broken Universe styling of filming going on with that whole period with Su Yung, and again, two crazy characters who absolutely sold that time period, in Rosemary's career, and I think that I think we all enjoyed watching that. Did you?
Oh, I loved it. I'd say, along with a lot of the fans, I was really, really angry that Rosemary had gone for so long. We're all dying for her to come back, while Su Yung was destroying the rest of the division and tormenting Ali. And you could see how she was breaking down Ali without Rosemary. So you could see Ali was just completely lost. And so it was just really, really. It was actually a quite emotionally driven story, even though it was played out so darkly. That's a bit quite kind of phrase.
So, and then obviously we can. I mean, at the end of the day, so Rosemary at this point now is completely out of the picture. However, what I really, really liked, even though Rosemary was now gone pretty much off TV, there was still moments where Impact would include her in storylines. She wasn't competing in the ring, but they still kept her relevant, and I think that is one of the the really good parts about Impact Wrestling. Now, they understand that you can build a character up to a point, but you can also totally destroy them within a show. It can be totally done and dusted within a show. And I think when you talk about the other promotions up north, in the end of the day, if they decide that they don't want to carry a storyline on, they just stop it. There's no, they don't really finish things off. They just stop stuff. And I think one of the really impressive things that Impact does really, really well is, yes, Rosemary's got an injury. The injury occurred, I believe, on an indie show, which was unfortunate as well. But she gets an injury, and they're like, right, okay, we need to finish what we're doing. We need to finish this story off. We need to write her out of TV, and we need to do it in the right way so that we can keep her relevant. We can then move that story through the time, or we can sort of kind of, start building something else during the time that she's healing, even if she's not in the ring. And I think Impact does that extremely well. And they did it great with Rosemary, because they kept her in different things all the way along. And I think they protected her. They really, really protected her. So, I mean, if we fast forward on to, I think it was January 2019, a return in Rosemary at the Homecoming pay-per-view. I think she came in and saved Kiera Hogan from her former friend, which at the time was Dark Alley and Su Yung. Now, she came in. I mean, the crowd at Homecoming just went absolutely insane.
Absolutely insane, which is saying something.
Well, I think it speaks volumes for the character, and I think, you know, it speaks volumes for the way that Impact as a company kept her relevant. They didn't just stick her in a drawer and leave her away. They still kept doing little bits. She kept sort of popping up here and there in different vignettes and different stuff going on. And then when she eventually actually turned up, I just think the crowd were like begging for Rosemary to come back. And then you just get this almighty.
They were cheering for her. They were cheering for her after the match before the coffin had opened. And it was as it built up, Rosemary was dropping hints about it online that she'd be back soon. Yeah, she wasn't finished with the company. Yeah. She wasn't finished with Su Yung. She wasn't finished with Ali, and that she would come back and she would get her revenge.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think, and again, it was all done really, really well. And it was just insane when she turned up. Now, I think over 2019 as a whole, I think it's been quite a slow burn for Rosemary. I think the company have been doing their best to protect her. They've been making sure that she is, you know, in 100% condition before they start throwing her into, you know, big matches. And I think her, you know, what she's been doing has been it's been a little bit limited in the ring when she has coming in. I think they've definitely been protecting her. It's been short and sweet kind of thing. She's very rarely been doing anything on her own in 2019. And I think, you know, that speaks testament to Impact Wrestling as a brand now, that they are starting to really think about how they treat their stars. I mean, let's face it, without your Rosemarys, you know, without your Sami Callahans, you know, the Impact is nothing. You know, they have to it's like build these stars up. They have to protect them. And I think what happens there also is that you start to get a little bit of loyalty. And I think, you know, you get the loyalty from the superstar. You know, Rosemary is extremely loyal to Impact Wrestling. I honestly don't believe that you will see her signed with anybody else anytime soon, because she is protected. She's looked after. She's obviously paid well. She's allowed to go and build her character on the indies and do more on that. She's able to do her own thing on social media. You know, and I think she's got that artistic freedom to be whatever she wants to be. So why would you want to go anywhere else? It restricts that. You know, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, she's the third longest superstar signed with the whole roster, along with Moose and Eddie Edwards. So she's been there for about now just over 3 years, I think. Yeah. So that just shows what loyalty to start off with. 2019 was indeed an off year, but again, after the leg injury, you could understand why, and you can see the in-ring work had changed a lot. Her finishing moves changed. I'm not sure what she's called it now, but she's dropped the red wedding by the looks of it to something else. Yeah. Which is a bit of a shock, really, because I enjoyed the red wedding.
Yeah, but I think that, you know, as character and as wrestlers, you sometimes you have to sort of kind of like recreate things. I mean, just because she's not doing the red wedding at the moment doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, in 6 months' time it suddenly makes a return. If it does make a, you know, you can guarantee that Josh and whoever, you know, I mean, obviously Don Callis at the moment, who's on commentary, but, you know, we don't know if that's going to be in 6 months' time. But whoever is on commentary in 6 months' time will go mental and make a big thing about it. You know, and sometimes you have to take something away to realise how much you miss it or whatever. And then when eventually it comes back, you know, you then pop, you know, because it's
definitely.
And it's like, oh man, I love that move. That was great. I'm so glad she's doing it again. Da, da, da. And again, you know, we don't know how much impact particular moves have on particular body parts. You know, and maybe the red wedding is something which is particularly tough on her knees. You know, you just don't know that. You know, it could be something which, you know, really, you know, is a bit of a no-no at the moment. But what I do believe is that the storyline that they are building, or that they've been building now, with James Mitchell, the Susie character, which I absolutely love. The Susie character, I think that's amazing. I hope they keep that going a little bit longer. Obviously, Havoc, Jessica Havoc, who is again an incredible talent. I was lucky enough to have a photo opportunity with her a couple of times in New York, which was great. A really nice lady. Off screen, shall I say, a great character. On screen, an absolute animal. In the ring, incredible presence. And I think recreating something there, because I think there's a little bit of unfinished business, but I believe between Rosemary and Havoc. So I think rebuilding that now, I think is a really good idea. And the way that they've done it in sort of kind of more vignette based, it's more storytelling. Again, storytelling. Building something up to eventually we'll start seeing matches. And of course, that leads us now into 2020, whereby I think we saw her first proper one-on-one match on the Impact show last week, I think it was, and she has and again one-on-one, she's now out there. They've obviously they've built this up, and they're now ready to start unleashing her on one-on-one matches, and I think personally that as 2020 rolls on now, they'll really start to build and work on this story, and it'll become quite a prominent storyline over the next 3 or 4 months. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that they're going the right way about it now. Again, they're building up a new rivalry. They're building up a new branch of storyline, and they did it with Rosemary before, and they did it with Sami Callihan and Tessa Blanchard. And they're going the right way about it. I think it's better to build it up slowly than to rush everything through and make a car crash.
I mean, I'll tell you what, there's something that I've thought about, and I've been championing it for such a long time on social media. I'm always saying I want to see Decay come back. I mean, obviously it wouldn't necessarily come back. Well, it wouldn't come back as the same because Abyss is not around anymore. But I mean, could you see like maybe some kind of reinvention of the Decay faction to come in and help, or be join this sort of kind of storyline, this building? I mean, if you think about it, at the moment, you've got James Mitchell, you've got Sienna. I mean, obviously at the minute you've got Susie, who's sort of kind of in limbo. But if Su Yung was to come back, I would assume that she would be part of the ministry or whatever. Do you know what I'm saying? So, and then you've got do you think that it would be a great opportunity to, for instance, to bring back Crazy Steve, and then maybe look at someone like, say, I don't know, Bram, or do you know someone I thought that might work in Decay if they brought him back as a bit of a monster type character? Is Jay Bradley. Now, I always thought that Jay Bradley, was a solid worker, but his characters that he came, they never really got over. And I often think that if you were to give him more of a sort of kind of like a beast type character, that could actually be the making of him on someone, on an Impact show. I don't know. There's loads of wrestlers out there, that could take on that man. So it was just someone that I thought might work in that in replace of Abyss. I don't know. What do you think?
I think Paradise Lost would be a tag team match to see come in and help Rosemary. But,
I think
Paradise Lost would probably be the best one, because it's then an old woman back stable versus Havoc and Su Yung. Yeah, that's Crazy Steve. I'd like to see him back, but I don't see really him doing much apart from being like James Mitchell is. Being one to interfere with James Mitchell rather than solidly go after Havoc and Su Yung. Okay, carry on.
No worries, mate. Yeah, I actually like the idea of Paradise Lost. I think that isn't that something that is it? Wow, I think that's something that Rosemary is like the leader of Paradise Lost. I believe in another indie promotion. I have seen a few bits and bobs like that. I think on YouTube and on social media, it's been put out, and I think Paradise Lost are an incredible team actually. And I think the reason that possibly they've not been brought into Impact at the moment is because we don't really have a women's tag team division, do we?
Yeah.
If we get a tag scenario, it's normally just sort of kind of like, you know, oh well, yeah, Ali's my friend and so's my friend. So it's all sort of kind of like built into this, almost like it's a faction rather than necessarily a tag team. But I think you're right. I think if you brought Paradise Lost in, they would be really good addition to sort of kind of like Rosemary. And it wouldn't necessarily, like you say, it wouldn't necessarily need to be Decay, even though I'd love to see Decay back. I think it's such a great gimmick. I think you're right. I think if they brought Paradise Lost in to be almost, you know, Rosemary's backup as such, I think that would work. That would work really, really well. I think you're right there. Now, what else do you think we could see from Rosemary moving forward? Or do you think this is sort of kind of like the way it's going to go?
I think this is really the way it's going to go. I'd like to see a knockout champion again. But you see Jordan Grace and Taya Valkyrie and Tessa Blanchard, and where they're going with them. I don't think there's a lot of vested interest in putting the belt back on Rosemary, or even putting it onto Hive.
Yeah. Not at this time. Not at this time. I don't
definitely not the time.
It's never going to happen. You know, we could see that maybe her being put back into that title picture, maybe towards the end of 2020, the beginning of 2021, maybe. But I think that, at this time, you know, with Jordan Grace, like you say, with Tessa being absolutely ginormous, I mean, that was an amazing victory at Hard to Kill. I'm fully invested in this whole, you know, well, it's not intergender wrestling, it's just wrestling. I'm fully invested in all of this, and I think it's great for women's wrestling. It's great for men's. It's just great for wrestling, full stop. You know, and let's face it. You know what? You know, people say, "Oh, it's unrealistic. It's unrealistic." Is it? Is it really? You know, there's some pretty. You know, I'm not being funny, but I might be bigger than Ronda Rousey, but I think she'd kick my ass. You know what I'm saying?
It's entertainment at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's entertainment. You know, let's face the facts. It's entertainment. You know, we're telling stories. I mean, I don't want to go into Hard to Kill, but yeah, the Tessa Sammy match was one of the best storytelling matches I've seen for quite some time. But anyway, let's move away from that. That's another discussion. So I think moving forward, I think Rosemary is gonna now, you know, cement. We're gonna see a good cemented feud now, and I think we're gonna see it regularly on Impact TV on a weekly basis. We're gonna see this feud build. We're gonna see lots of different matches on that, I think, and I think eventually we're gonna see a real return for Rosemary being, you know, one of the main stay characters on the Impact roster. What do you think?
Definitely, I think Rosemary's still got a few years left on the roster, and if she goes, it's going to be a massive loss.
Yeah, no, I agree. I really don't think she will. I think she's very loyal to Impact. I think Impact are very loyal to her. You know, and they're never not going to be able to give her something, because she's a great little character actress. I mean, just that what springs to mind, and I always makes me chuckle. Is the wedding of Brian Cage and Melissa when she literally just sort of kind of like she just suddenly appears, and she's like looking at her nails and looking around with her fancy, you know, fancy hat on and all the rest of it. You know, just silly little things like that really cement her as an incredible talent. And you know, you always go, oh, remember that like 3 second stint on you know, she didn't have to be there for long, but it was really, really, whatever it was really cool, you know. And I think, you know, the fans will always are going to pop for Rosemary. She's just an incredible character, and I have to say, one of my favourite wrestlers on the Impact roster.
She's my favourite.
Yeah, I know. She's definitely.
Yeah.
She's
my favourite.
Without doubt. Okay, so I think that brings our first episode of Impacted to a close. I think we've definitely covered quite a few aspects of Rosemary as a character. We've talked about her past. We've talked about her, we've talked about the present, and we've talked about where we think that she's going to go in the future. And, you know, just final thoughts to the listeners now. Don't forget, both of us are on Twitter. And we're also huge fans of, obviously, Total Nonstop Impact. So we just want to say thank you to the guys over there for allowing us to put this show together. And make sure that you give them a listen, because it is the best Impact review on podcast that there is today. So make sure you give Trent, the scumbag Kyle, and the big man J-Bone a listen. Every single week they do a great show. So don't make sure that you make sure you give them a listen. You never know, I might pop up. You never know. Okay, so so let's just give our final goodbyes. So can you give us where we can find you on Twitter, please, Joe?
At JOE-KER, empty space. If you want to step into the void, follow ahead. But keep it polite.
Make sure that you give Joe a listen. He's a great guy to follow on Twitter. He's always finding different news and sharing it around, and he's a great guy to communicate on there. He loves his pro wrestling and he loves Impact. So if you are an Impact fan and you love talking Impact, well then, Joe is a great guy to follow. If you're interested in following me, then I am at JB Hawk on Twitter. You will also find me on my Facebook, which is if you find me as Jason Hawk, I'm on there. But bottom line is, I'm always willing to talk about wrestling. I love wrestling, pro wrestling, whether it be the indie circuit. Big fan of AAW, as well as Impact. I'm a big fan of wrestling, Revolver as well. So anything you want to talk about, I'm there. As long as it's not WWE, I'm not really interested in that. So anyway, fantastic first episode. So it's goodbye from me, and it's goodbye. Take care, guys. See you next time.